I stayed near the back, half a step behind the press line, where nobody bothers to look unless they need a quote they'll never use. Vanessa was on stage, bathed in that cold white light they love at these things. She had the crowd exactly where she wanted them, leaning in, nodding, smiling on cue. Lamiva was never about perfection, she said, voice steady. Practice. It's about control. Your skin, your rules, your power. Applause rolled through the room like a wave hitting glass. I didn't clap. I watched her mouth shape the words she'd rehearsed in our bedroom 2 nights ago, while I sat on the edge of the bed, checking liquidity ratios on my phone. She hadn't asked for feedback. She never did anymore. She wrapped up the speech without mentioning me once. Not a thank you to Cole Capital Partners. Not even a nod to the silent partner who'd wired $9 million across 3 tranches to keep this launch from collapsing under its own ambition. That part didn't bother me. We'd agreed on the silhouette. She was the face. I was the wiring behind the wall. But there's a difference between staying invisible and being erased in real time. Then the music shifted. Not the generic playlist the venue usually runs, but something slower. A live string quartet tucked into the corner. Suddenly relevant. Julian Vance walked onto the stage like he owned it. He always moved like that, loose shoulders, too much wrist when he gestured, like he thought the room existed to watch him think. He leaned in, kissed Vanessa's cheek, lingered a beat too long, and the cameras loved it. Flashes popped so fast they sounded like a muffled firecracker string. Come on, Julian murmured into the mic, smiling that lazy smile of his. Let's give them a show. He pulled her into a slow dance. Not a friendly sway. Not a PR stunt. His hand settled low on her hip. Fingers spread like he'd done it before, more than once. Her other hand rested on his shoulder. Fingers curling into the fabric of his jacket. They moved like they'd rehearsed it, which meant they probably had. I watched her laugh, head tilted back just enough to expose the line of her throat. Julian's thumb brushed her spine through the sequins of that Halpern dress. She'd made me wait an extra week, because it needed the right drama. Drama, right. People around me started whispering. A woman from Gloss Glam nudged her photographer. Get this. Front page tomorrow. I pulled out my phone and opened Slack. Sent one message to Mara. Myself, Ethan 12:42 a.m. Pulled a wire. Quietly, 3 dots appeared. Then, Mara, 12:42 a.m. You sure? Ethan 12:43 a.m. Do it now. Trigger the reputational risk clause. Freeze the operating account pending internal review. No exceptions. Mara, 12:43 a.m. Understood. I'll notify legal. I slid the phone back into my pocket and turned toward the exit. I didn't look at the stage again. There was nothing left to see. The car was waiting at the curb. I gave the driver my usual nod and sank into the leather seat. He merged into traffic without asking where to. He knew the address. Tribeca, our place, or hers. Technically, I bought it before we got married. Put it in both names because she said it made her feel like a partner. Now it just felt like another line item I'd have to untangle. By the time I got home, the apartment was dark except for the city glow bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I poured 2 fingers of Macallan, sat at the desk in my study, and opened my laptop. Mara had already moved. The first batch of wire transfers, payroll, vendor advances, retail deposits were flagged. The bank's automated system would catch the rest by morning. Risk algorithms don't care about apologies or Instagram captions. I scrolled to the latest draft of the dissolution of equity docs my lawyers have been quietly updating for months. Vanessa liked to talk about building Lamiva from scratch. She'd tell anyone who'd listen that she'd maxed out credit cards and begged for shelf space. What she left out was that I'd paid off those cards before the interest hit, that I'd called in favors to get her into Saks and Neiman, that the scrappy startup narrative was a marketing asset, not a fact. Around 2, I heard the elevator chime, the soft click of heels across marble, the faint rustle of silk against skin. She was humming, something from the dance. Probably. I closed my laptop and waited. She appeared in the doorway, still in the dress, hair slightly undone. Her cheeks were flushed, and she smelled like champagne and Julian's cologne. She leaned against the frame, smiling like she'd won something. "You left early," she said. "So, did you?" I replied. She waved a hand, dismissive. It was branding. "Ethan, everyone's talking about us. Engagements through the roof." I swiveled the chair to face her. "Branding. Right. Don't start." She stepped into the room, kicking off her shoes. "It's one dance." The investors loved it. Even Lisa from Forerunner said it humanized the brand. Humanized. I repeated. "Is that what you call letting another man put his hand on your hip while you smile like he pays the bills?" Her smile tightened. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I stood, slowly. "You dance with him in front of every major outlet in New York, in front of the board, in front of the same people who signed checks because they trusted your judgment. And now you're telling me it's branding." "I built this brand." She snapped. "Not you. Me." I laughed. "Once. Dry. You built the Instagram captions. I built the balance sheet." She crossed her arms. "You think freezing me out changes anything?" "I'll find new capital. Better capital." "You'll try," I said. "And when you do, you'll discover that better capital asks questions. Like why the CEO of a luxury skincare company decided to turn her product launch into a public affair with a creative director she's been fucking since April." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know that. I know everything. Vanessa, I know about the hotel in the Flatiron District. I know about the burner phone in your glove compartment. I know about the email draft you never sent. The one where you told Julian you'd leave me once the series be closed." I paused. "Spoiler, it's not closing." She took a step forward, voice low. "You're destroying me." "No," I said. "I'm removing myself from a brand I no longer trust. There's a difference." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a second, something flickered across her face. Uncertainty. Maybe, but it vanished quickly, replaced by the mask she wore for boardrooms and magazine covers. "Fine," she said. "Do whatever you want, but don't expect me to beg." "I don't," I said. "Begging's beneath you. Remember?" She turned and walked out. I listened to her heels fade down the hall. Then the bathroom door shut. Water ran. The shower kicked on. I sat back down and reopened my laptop. At 2:14 a.m., the notification appeared. Bank alert. Lamiva operating account, pending internal review. Funds temporarily frozen. I stared at it for a long moment. Somewhere down the hall, Vanessa was scrubbing off makeup and champagne, and the scent of a man who'd never have to pay her bills. She didn't know yet. She wouldn't until morning, when the world started asking questions she couldn't answer. I closed the lid, stood, and walked to the bedroom. Lay down on top of the covers, hands folded across my chest, staring at the ceiling. The city hummed below. Indifferent. One notification. That's all it took. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle in. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and realize the dance wasn't a performance. This was. I woke up at 6:30, same as every weekday. The bed was still made on her side. I showered, dressed, and walked into the kitchen just as her phone started vibrating against a marble island. She came in 5 minutes later, hair tied back, no makeup, wearing my hoodie, the one she always grabbed when she wanted to look unbothered. She reached for the coffee pot without looking at me. "You sleep okay?" she asked, tone light, like we were negotiating a hangover instead of a career collapse. I didn't answer. What's it here, glance her phone? The screen lit up with back-to-back notifications. Her thumb hovered, then tapped. Her face changed. "What the fuck?" she muttered. The phone rang. "Caller ID, Nate Goldstein, CFO." She swiped to answer, turning away from me. "Nate," she said, voice tight, "talk to me." I poured myself a cup of black coffee and leaned against the counter. I could hear Nate's voice through the speaker. Clipped, panicked, very Nate. "Vanessa, the credit line from Coal Capital just got pulled. All of it, overnight. Legal dropped the notice at 4 a.m. She went still. "That's not possible. We have contracts." They triggered the material reputational risk clause. Page 14, subsection C. It's airtight, and the bank froze the operating account pending internal review. We can't move payroll. We can't pay vendors. I can't even cover the Saks deposit due today. She turned toward me, eyes sharp now. Ethan, I sipped my coffee. Vanessa, Nate continued. The board's freaking out. Lisa Chun just emailed me asking if we're insolvent. I need you to fix this. I'll handle it, she said, and hung up. She stared at me. You froze my accounts. Our accounts. I corrected. And it's not personal. It's risk management. Risk management. She repeated, voice low. You did this because I danced with Julian? I did this because you made a calculated decision, prioritize your ego over the stability of a company that depends on investor confidence. The dance was just the most public symptom. She stepped closer, setting her phone down hard on the island. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll sue Coal Capital. You what? I set my mug down. Take me to court and explain under oath why you thought it was a good idea to publicly align yourself with a man you've been having an extramarital relationship with, while sitting on $9 million of my capital. You think discovery will be fun for you? Her jaw tightened. I built the customer base. I built the brand equity. You just moved numbers around. Numbers. I said, that pay for your office lease, your influencer campaigns, your sample kits, your pop-ups in Soho. Numbers that make payroll for 47 employees who don't know their CEO spends her afternoons in a midtown hotel room with a man who can't keep his hands off her during a product launch. She flinched, just barely. You've been watching me, she said. I've been protecting my investment. There's a difference. Her phone buzzed again. A new email preview flashed on the screen. Subject, urgent, payment declined. Saks Fifth Avenue retail installment. She picked it up, stared at it, then looked back at me. Fix it. No. Ethan, you wanted to be the face of Lamiva. I said, you wanted the spotlight, the interviews, the self-made CEO narrative. Fine, own it. But ownership comes with consequences. You don't get to play house with another man in front of the entire industry and expect me to keep underwriting your fantasy. She leaned forward, palms flat on the island. What do you want? I want you to remember who you're talking to. I said, I want you to understand, clearly, permanently, that Lamiva isn't yours because you dreamed it. It's yours because I funded it. And I can take it away just as easily. Her breath hitched. Just once. The phone rang again. This time it was the landlord for the Mercer Street flagship. She ignored it. I'll find new investors, she said. But the conviction was thinner now. You'll try, I said, and they'll ask why Coal Capital walked. And when I tell them the truth, not the gossip, the documented facts, they'll walk too, because I'm not just some silent partner. Vanessa, I'm the guy who decides which brands get to survive in this town. And right now, you're not making a compelling case. She looked down at her phone. Another notification. Bank alert. Insufficient funds. Amex Centurion payment declined. She swallowed. You're really doing this. I already did. I said, last night, while you were dancing. She stood there for a long moment, fingers gripping the edge of the island. Then she pushed off and walked toward the bedroom. Halfway down the hall, she stopped and looked back. You'll regret this, she said. I shook my head. You already regret it. You just haven't admitted it yet. She disappeared into the bedroom. I finished my coffee and opened my laptop. Mara had sent over the updated board packet. I skimmed it, made one edit to the opening paragraph, and hit send. By noon, the first media inquiry would hit. By 3, the investors would start circling. By evening, Vanessa would realize the world she'd built on my capital was already crumbling. And I'd be right here, watching it happen, one notification at a time. The call from Mara came in at 10:47 a.m. I was still at the desk, cycling through term sheets and bridge loan structures I had no intention of signing. Ethan, she said, no preamble. It's starting. I leaned back, walked me through it. First, Forerunner sent a formal notice. They're pausing the series B until governance concerns are addressed. Insight's doing the same. I just got off with Lisa Chun. She's not returning Vanessa's calls. And Nate called again. Payroll's due Friday. He's panicking. I nodded to myself. And Julian? Already circling. His agency sent a press hold request to Gloss Glam an hour ago. They're trying to distance him before the first think piece drops. Good, I said. Let them run. I ended the call and checked my inbox. 3 new messages from Vanessa, all unread. Subject lines range from "We need to talk to this is your last chance." I deleted them without opening. By 1 o'clock, my phone started lighting up with texts from people I usually only heard from at holiday parties. Jared, first Mark heard there's noise at Lamiva. Everything's stable on your end? Sloan, General Catalyst, just saw the frozen account chatter. You good? Ethan? I didn't answer. Let them wonder. Uncertainty was a better filter than any NDAs I could draft. At 2:15, the elevator chimed. I didn't look up. I heard her heels, fast, sharp, angry, cross the floor. She didn't knock. You've ruined me, she said. I closed my laptop. You've inconvenienced yourself. There's a difference. She slammed her purse onto the desk. I had meetings today. For meetings, do you know what it's like to walk into a conference room and have the first slide be a bank alert? Do you? I can imagine. I said, but you'll have to speak up. I'm having a hard time hearing you over the sound of your reputation collapsing. Her eyes were red, but dry. She was past crying. This was the next phase. Anger as armor. I went to see Julian, she said. That got a reaction. Not much of one, but enough. I raised an eyebrow. At the polo bar, she continued. I thought he'd help. I thought he'd at least say something publicly. Back me up. Make this look like a misunderstanding. And she let out a short, bitter laugh. He was 30 minutes late. Ordered a martini. Didn't even apologize. First thing out his mouth? I can't get involved in your marital drama. Ness, my marital drama. I said nothing. I told him we danced in front of everyone. I reminded him, and he just shrugged, said it was a mistake, that his board was already asking questions. Her voice cracked on the word questions. He didn't even finish his drink. I stood, slowly, walked around the desk until I was facing her. You expected loyalty from a man who only touches you when there's a camera nearby? I expected him to have a spine. She snapped. No, I said, you expected him to bail you out because you spent the last 6 months convincing yourself that charm equals capital. It doesn't. Julian's good for headlines and mood boards. I'm good for $9 million and the network that decides whether your name ever appears on a cap table again. She looked away. I'll find someone else. You won't, I said, because by the time you finish explaining why Coal Capital pulled out, they'll already be looking at page 14, subsection C. They'll see the reputational risk clause and ask themselves if you're worth the headache. And every single one of them will come to the same conclusion I did. She turned back to me, which is that you're not a founder. You're a brand ambassador with a God complex. Her breath caught. Just once. My phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Board emergency call scheduled for 4 p.m. They're asking for Vanessa's resignation. I showed her the screen. She stared at it for a long time. Then she sank into the chair across from my desk. Not dramatically, just deflated. They want me gone, she said. Quieter now. They want accountability. I said, and since you're the only one who gave him a reason to panic, you're the obvious choice. What happens to Lamiva? It survives. I said, without you, new CEO by Q3. Different face. Same balance sheet. She shook her head. You're erasing me. No, I said, I'm correcting the record. You can keep the title of co-founder in your LinkedIn bio. No one's stopping you. But equity, voting rights, board seat, those were never yours to lose. They were mine to revoke. Another buzz, this one from a bank. I glanced down. Alert, payment declined, Saks Fifth Avenue retail installment. Insufficient funds. I turned the screen toward her. She didn't cry. She just stared at the words like they might rearrange themselves if she looked hard enough. I didn't think you'd actually do it. She whispered, you'd dance with him. I said, in front of everyone. You forced my hand the moment you decided your ego was more important than the company we built. She looked up at me, really looked at me, for the first time since this started. Was any of it real? I held her gaze. You tell me. Silence. Long. Heavy. I sat back down and reopened my laptop. You have until 4 to decide if you're walking into that board meeting with a resignation letter or a lawsuit. Either way, I'll be on the call. She stood, slow, like her bones hurt. At the door, she paused. You're enjoying this, she said. I didn't look up. I'm enjoying the silence after the music stops. There's a difference. She left. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime. At 3:58 p.m. I joined the board call. Vanessa was already on. Muted. I unmuted just long enough to say one thing. I've reviewed the governance report. I support the recommendation. Then I muted again. 2 minutes later. Vanessa's line disconnected. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. The notification would come soon enough. The one that confirmed her exit, her loss of control, her very public fall from a pedestal I built. And when it did, I'd already be moving on to the next line item. Because in this town, the dance always ends. The wire transfer? That's forever. The conference room at Kravis smelled like leather and old money. I was early, as always. Vanessa walked in at exactly 2 minutes past the hour, flanked by her new attorney. Some guy from Paul Weiss who looked like he'd never lost motion, but had clearly never gone up against Mara in Discovery. Mara didn't look up from her notes. She waited until Vanessa sat down, then closed her folder with a soft snap. Shall we skip the pleasantries? Mara said. Ethan's time is billed by the second. Vanessa's lawyer cleared his throat. We're here to discuss an equitable distribution of assets tied to Lamiva and related entities, including there's no equitable distribution. Greg, I cut in. This isn't a divorce proceeding over a brownstone in Park Slope. This is a forensic unwinding of a $9 million capital deployment. Greg blinked. My client built significant brand equity during her tenure as CEO, brand equity she can keep. I said, in fact, she's welcome to list founder on her resume until the SEC decides to audit the gaps between her press releases and the cap table. But equity, voting rights, board control, those were never on the table. Vanessa leaned forward, voice low. I want what I'm owed. You're owed exactly what the contracts say. Mara replied, sliding a stapled packet across the table. Page 3, paragraph 8. Your restricted stock units vest only upon continued employment and absence of material reputational damage. The board terminated you this morning. Vesting stops today. Vanessa flipped through the pages, jaw tightening. You planned this. I prepared for it. I said, there's a difference. You gave me every reason to believe you'd prioritize your personal life over the company. So I made sure the legal architecture reflected reality. Her lawyer tried again. Will contest the termination, wrongful discharge, breach of fiduciary duty. On what grounds? Mara asked, almost bored, that your client danced with her lover in front of every major investor in New York? That she triggered the reputational risk clause she herself signed off on during the Series A? Or that she failed to disclose a conflict of interest with Mr. Vance, whose agency was being paid from operating funds? Greg went quiet. Vanessa set the papers down. What's the number? Exit package. Mara said, $2 million, paid out over 18 months. Contingent on your immediate resignation from all affiliated boards, surrender of company devices, and execution of a comprehensive NDA. $2 million, Vanessa repeated. Flat. Consider it a courtesy. I said, you'd walk away with less if we litigated. And you'd spend the next 3 years explaining under oath why you thought branding included letting another man grope you on stage while my capital was on the line. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a second, I saw something close to hatred. Then it smoothed over into something colder. Calculation. And if I don't sign, then we initiate clawback proceedings for every marketing dollar spent promoting your image since January. Mara said, we audit every influencer contract, every retail partnership, every founder-led campaign. We notify the IRS of potential misclassification of personal expenses, and we make very sure that every VC in Manhattan knows you're toxic before you finish your first coffee meeting. Vanessa's laugh was sharp. You destroy me over a dance. I protect my investors over your ego. I corrected. Again, there's a difference. She turned to her lawyer. Can they do this? Greg hesitated. The clauses appear enforceable. The reputational risk trigger is unusually well documented. She stared at the NDA for a long moment. Then she reached for the pen. Mara stopped her. One more condition. You don't mention Cole Capital, Ethan, or any aspect of our financial involvement in any interview, memoir, podcast, or social media post. Ever. Violation triggers immediate repayment of the exit package, plus damages. Vanessa's hand hovered. That's gagging me. That's protecting a privately held investment firm from a self-inflicted PR disaster. I said, sign it, or don't. But if you don't, the next time your name appears in Business of Fashion, it'll be next to the phrase civil defendant. She signed, slowly, deliberately, then slid the packet back across the table without looking at me. As she stood, she paused. Was any of it real? I gathered my things, stood, and buttoned my suit jacket. You danced with someone else, in front of everyone. That answered your question before I ever had to. She walked out without another word. Greg followed, already scrolling through his phone, probably wondering how fast he could distance himself from a losing client. Mara stayed behind, packing her folders. Clean break, she said. Not clean. I replied. Just final. We left separately. Outside, the sun was already low. I saw Vanessa standing near the curb, waiting for a car. Julian's black Audi pulled up. He didn't get out. Didn't even roll down the window. Just sat there, engine idling, while she stood on the sidewalk with a signed NDA in her bag and $2 million worth of leash around her neck. She got into the back seat without a word. The car pulled into traffic and disappeared. I walked to my own car, nodded to the driver, and sank into the seat. Checked my phone. One new email from Mara. Settlement executed. Fund to be released pending NDA compliance. Lamiva board updated. New CEO search underway. I deleted it, closed my eyes, let the city noise wash over me. Somewhere, Vanessa was realizing that the dance wasn't the climax of her story. It was the opening scene of her irrelevance, and I was already on to the next deal. 3 months later, I got a Google alert. Vanessa Sinclair Cole steps back from Lamiva. Sources say departure follows internal review. I didn't click it. I already knew what it said. Mara had vetted the draft with the comms team 2 weeks ago. Stepping back was the approved phrasing. Internal review covered the reputational risk clause without triggering the NDA. Clean, sterile, forgettable. I was in the car, heading uptown after a board lunch at 21. My phone buzzed again this time. A text from Nate Goldstein. He'd stayed on as CFO under the new CEO. Nate, she's telling people she left a focus on creative consulting. Thought you'd want to know. I replied with one word. Noted. 10 minutes later. Another text. Different number. Unknown. Unknown. I saw the announcement. Hope you're well. I didn't recognize the area code. Probably a burner. Probably her. I deleted it without replying. That afternoon, I had a call with a founder in Austin. SAS. Strong unit economics. No drama. Exactly the kind of deal I preferred now. Quiet, scalable, uncomplicated by ego and sequin dresses. Midway through the pitch, my assistant patched in a message. Ethan, Vanessa's attorney is on the line. Says it's urgent. I muted the Austin founder. Put him through. Greg's voice came on. Cautious. Ethan, just touching base. My client's exploring a few opportunities. And we want to ensure there's no ambiguity regarding the NDA. There isn't. I said, she signed it. She abides by it. Of course. Greg said quickly. It's just she's received inquiries from Vogue Business. Fast Company. They're interested in her journey. We want to avoid any misunderstandings. Tell her the journey ends where the NDA begins. I said, if she talks, she pays. Simple. A pause. Then understood. I'll convey that. I hung up and unmuted the Austin founder. He hadn't noticed the interruption. Good. I like that. Later that week, I was in the Hamptons for a friend's birthday. The house was all glass and sharp angles. The kind of place people rented to signal wealth rather than enjoy it. I was on the deck, alone, when I saw her, Vanessa, walking along the beach with a woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing a linen dress that looked expensive but deliberately casual. The uniform of someone trying to look like they'd stepped away from power rather than been pushed. She saw me, hesitated, then kept walking. The woman with her said something, and Vanessa shook her head, smiling thinly. The smile didn't reach her eyes. I turned back to my drink. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Unknown. You're really going to pretend you don't see me? I didn't respond. 2 minutes later. Unknown. I'm not the villain you've made me out to be. I typed one reply and sent it. You made yourself a villain the night you danced. No response after that. The next morning, Mara forwarded me a clip from page 6. Vanessa had been spotted at a brunch in Sag Harbor, radiant and relaxed. According to the reporter, the photo showed her laughing, but her left hand was curled around her water glass, knuckles white. Mara's note, still testing boundaries. Should we escalate? I replied, no, let her talk. She'll trip over the NDA herself. And she did. 2 weeks later, Mara sent over a transcript of a podcast Vanessa had guested on, under a fake name, Alexandra, claiming to be a former beauty exec. But the host mentioned a high-profile launch party where creative vision met personal risk, and Alexandra didn't correct her. I forwarded the clip to Greg with one line, Clause 4, B, trigger the repayment. Within hours, Vanessa's lawyer was on the phone, backpedaling. It was a misunderstanding. She'll issue a retraction. The podcast has agreed to remove the episode. Too late. I said, the NDA is binary. She spoke. Now she pays. Ethan, please. She's broke. The exit package is all she has left. Then she should have thought about that before she decided her personal life was a branding opportunity. I hung up. Mara handled the rest, freezing the remaining installments, initiating arbitration. Vanessa didn't fight it, probably because she knew she'd lose. One evening in early November, I got an email, no subject line, no signature, just one sentence. I see it now. You were never part of my story. I was part of yours. I read it twice, deleted it, closed my laptop. I walked to the balcony of my apartment, looked out over the city. Somewhere, Vanessa was learning what it felt like to be a footnote, to have your name scrubbed from a website, your contributions reduced to a line item, your legacy owned by someone who never needed to dance for attention. I thought about that night at the launch party, the music, the flashbulbs, the way she'd leaned into Julian like he was her future. She'd been wrong. He was just another symptom. The disease was her belief that perception could replace performance, that charm could outrun capital, that she could build a kingdom on borrowed scaffolding and never pay the price. She'd paid it, in full. I went back inside, poured a drink, and sat down at my desk, opened the next pitch deck, the next deal, the next silent, profitable venture where the founder understood one simple rule. Money talks. Everything else dances for it. I took a sip, scrolled to the executive summary, and got to work. Some lessons cost equity. Hers cost everything.